There's a story of a graduate student who wasn't sure what project to work on. His professor told him that within his area of interest and expertise, he should find the hardest problem. If he solved the hardest mystery or became good at the hardest task, then he could be sure of having a major impact. Today, I'd like to talk about one of the hardest problems in exploration and what I've learned in the process. Edward Alfred Martel is the father of modern speleology, which is the study of caves. Around the start of the last century, Martel explored caves along the French and Spanish border. Some of these caves had rivers in them. Martel would enter the cave, and he would follow the cave passage until the passage went underwater. Martel would take off his clothes, and wearing only a cap, he would enter the river, and he would start to swim through the darkness underwater. If Martel was able to find some place to come out of the water, he would take off his cap, he would take out the candle and the matches that he kept within, he would light the candle, and Martel would continue exploring into the darkness. Martel was one of the first sump divers. Sump diving is a kind of cave diving. In the most popular form of cave diving, scuba divers enter a cave through a spring or a cenote, which is a kind of water-filled hole in the ground, and they'll go swimming through the underwater tunnel where they'll see the sights or they'll conduct research, and then they'll turn around and they'll exit the cave. When they come up to the surface, there's only sky above them. Sumps are underwater tunnels with at least one entrance within dry cave. Cavers may walk a long distance into a cave carrying their scuba tanks, and when they come to a sump, they'll put on their scuba gear, and they'll get into the water, and they'll go swimming into the darkness. If they're able to find some place to get out, they'll get out of the water, and they'll continue walking and exploring. The 2018 Thailand cave rescue is a great example of sump diving. Now, why should you be interested in cave exploration or sump diving? All new exploration on Earth is going on in the Earth, in caves. People have climbed the tallest mountains, and they've been to the bottom of the ocean. Caves are the new frontier. There are caves over 2 kilometers deep. There are caves hundreds of kilometers long with plenty of unexplored tunnels. In many caves, though, exploration stopped when the explorers came to a sump. Sump diving, getting through the sumps to continue exploring, is key. I'd now like to talk about 3 of the caving trips I've been on. None have been easy, and some have gone horribly wrong. Cave diving has a certain set of rules. If you get the right training, if you use the right high-quality equipment, and you follow the rules, then the many risks are manageable. The rules include always bringing at least 3 lights and always using a guideline so that even if none of your lights are usable, you can always follow the guideline back to the entrance of the cave. Cavers feel that if you follow the rules of cave diving, then the sport is very safe. Being human, sometimes we decide that we don't need to follow the rules. This is usually when things go very wrong. As an example, we had found what we thought was a great cave. A spring gushed water from the bottom of a hillside. The entrance to the spring was relatively small. Inside the tunnel, it opened up a little. It traveled a short distance on an S-bend, and after a short bit, you could see air above the water. Unfortunately, there was a big pile of rocks which was blocking the way forward and up to the air. On one trip, I decided that I didn't need to use a guideline. The tunnel was short, I'd been in it 10 times before, and with the S-bend, it made running a guideline rather difficult. I decided, it just wasn't worth it. So I wriggled into the cave, and I traveled forward to the pile of rocks. I started trying to move them out of the way. The bottom of the cave is covered in mud, and moving the rocks caused the mud to billow up and it took visibility down to 0. This is completely normal. I continued in the darkness trying to move the rocks around, and I didn't make a breakthrough, and so I decided, okay, that's enough, I'm going to exit the cave. Somewhere along the way, on my way back, I got turned around and I got lost. This is ridiculous! The tunnel is less than 8 meters long, and I couldn't find my way out. Everywhere I went, I either ran into a wall or the tunnel became so small, I just couldn't fit my way through. Periodically, I would stop and hope that the current would wash the mud out of the way, but there was just too much mud. I remember thinking to myself, so this is what it's like to die. Every minute or so, I would stop to do nothing, to control my breathing, to keep myself from panicking. After squirming around for 15 minutes, I told God that if He got me out of here, I would never dive in this cave again. 5 minutes later, I found the right way to go, and I escaped from the cave. On the surface, I looked at the pressure gauge from the tank I was breathing from, and it read 0. The tank was empty. Lessons learned. The rules are the rules for a reason, and God's timing is perfect. Unfortunately, a lot of the lessons that we learn in life have to come through firsthand experience. This is especially true for very hard problems. No one has solved them yet, so there's very few people to talk to about what to do or to reinforce the lessons that we should already know. It's through this firsthand experience that we develop the new knowledge and, again, reinforce the lessons that we've forgotten. I now like to talk about, for my second trip, about my favorite cave. My favorite cave has one difficult obstacle after another. My teammate, Kirk Moorhead, and I would enter the cave, and we'd travel to the obstacle that had stopped us the last time. We would use a new technique or new equipment, and we'd get past the obstacle. We'd be able to continue seeing great new cave until we came to the next obstacle. Our trips were getting longer and longer. On each trip, we had to alternate many times between swimming through cold 9-degree centigrade sumps or walking, carrying our scuba tanks, or crawling with them. We wore thick dry suits to keep ourselves dry and warm in the water, but then on land we would overheat. At the end of every trip, we would emerge from the cave exhausted and happy to see our porters. My favorite caving trip is when we had our greatest success in this cave. Kirk and I entered, and we passed through 6 short sumps, with wading in between deep water or crawling with our scuba gear in between the sumps. We came to a 4-meter waterfall that we had previously put ropes up, and we climbed up that. Then we traveled down a long walking passage with another sump along the way, which had some really nice cave formations along it. At the end of the passage is the largest cave room in the region, and it has a 5-meter waterfall crashing into it. Kirk put ropes up this while I just tried to stay out of the water. Earlier, I had torn a hole in my dry suit while crawling through sharp limestone, and any time that the water came above my thigh, cold water leaked in, and this was rather unpleasant. Above the waterfall, we found almost a kilometer of great new cave, which ended at, yeah, you guessed it, another sump. We mapped this area, turned around, and made the long trip to the exit. Outside the cave, we found our porters curled up together to keep each other warm. We had been in the cave over 12 hours, and they were getting ready to call out a rescue. I changed into dry clothing, I took my dry suit, and poured out a few liters of water from my dry suit. and our porters carried our equipment home. In cave exploration, we found the requirement to adapt and make do. No team has all the resources that they want. We all have budgets, and frequently we're going up against the laws of physics. Most scuba equipment is too heavy and too fragile for caving, and most caving equipment was just plain not designed for scuba diving. Dry suits tear, and to go scuba diving, you have to bring with you a lot of heavy equipment, heavy lead to get you down. As a consequence, we're constantly looking for new techniques from different sports and different people to adapt and finding ways to take care of and make do of what we have. I should say that no success has been possible without those who have been supporting us. These include the people carrying the heavy objects to and into the cave, the people taking care of things at home, and the people designing the new equipment. We appreciate them very much. For my third trip, near where I live is a river that spends part of its journey underground. At one point, the river goes into a hole in the ground. 15 kilometers later, it comes out of a spring at the bottom of a cliff. I belong to a caving club, a grotto, which has access to a cave about halfway in between these 2 points. The cave has 2 levels. The lower level is underwater. We know that the river connects to this lower level at some point, but we had never found where that was. Over the years, as we've explored the upper level, we found pits to get down into the lower level. Some divers would rappel down into the water, and we'd have our scuba gear lowered down to us. We put it on, we tie up a guideline, and we go exploring. Along the way, we found some interesting things. This includes many fish. Now, these are not blind, cave-adapted fish. These are regular catfish and bass. We know, though, that the closest surface access point for surface water to this water is over 6 kilometers away, and so it's a mystery how they've gotten there. After years of work exploring the different areas, we recently made a major breakthrough. We hadn't been having a lot of success in the upper level of the cave. We had a few unexplored tunnels, but they were completely full of mud and rocks, and we'd been digging, but we didn't know if they'd go anywhere useful. In the lower level, though, one day, as I was swimming along, I found a new area. The bottom of this underwater tunnel was washed clean. There were just rocks. In all our other underwater tunnels, they were covered in mud because there was no current to wash it away. I continued exploring, seeing the sights, and then I decided to turn around. That's when I realized I was in a strong current, which is going the wrong way. Fortunately, the tunnel was relatively small, and I was able to grab the walls and pull myself back to the exit. Soon after, one of my teammates was able to use this tunnel to find new, dry cave. We're looking forward to going back and exploring further. In cave exploration, we found that we've had to put in years of hard work to get a major breakthrough. And frequently, my successes are based on years of work by the people who went before us. And there's also the times where I've put in sloppy work or the team has tried to get that great breakthrough just in a single trip. In all cases, we've had to go back and do the work over again. Frequent, conservative, high-quality efforts are boring and they make you feel like a failure, but they do build up over the years, and after a couple years of work, you do get that major breakthrough. To close, I'd like to encourage you to look for the hardest problem in your own life. When you get that breakthrough, it's going to be a big breakthrough, and you're going to be able to help a lot of people. Along the way, you're going to have to learn a lot through firsthand experience. You're going to have to adapt and make do with the resources available to you, and you're going to have to put in years of high-quality work. In the area of cave exploration, sump diving is that hardest problem. Through hard work, though, sump divers and their teams are exploring the last unexplored places on Earth. Thank you.